And what is up, everyone? I am Joe DeHoyos. I am host of Beyond the Woodline. This is a special segment that I've entitled Woodline Encounters, and this segment deals with our witnesses and people who have actually experienced, whether it be Bigfoot or Dogman or other cryptids or UFOs and aliens or the supernatural or the paranormal. And so this is what this segment will deal with. The Beyond the Woodline itself deals with a lot of the investigators and people who do research and stuff like this. And uh, this show will be the meat of the subject, I guess you could say, from actual people who have like really good experiences. And but my researchers and investigators, they've got some really good experiences too. So I recommend you check those guys out. And in my own personal life, I started up a paranormal group called Woodline Paranormal. You can find us on Facebook. We've already done a couple of little investigations, one of them being out in Old Town Spring. We're going out to a place called Demon Road this Wednesday. That's out in Huntsville, Texas. It's an old cemetery by a place called Martha's Chapel. So we'll be doing that next Wednesday. So yeah, I look forward to telling you guys about that. Hopefully we get some good evidence and I can share that with you guys. But tonight I have with me Miss Shirley. Miss Shirley, how are you doing?
I'm doing well, thank you. How are you?
I'm doing great. Yeah. So if you don't mind, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and um, yeah, then go into your little encounter and what were you doing that day and you know what happened?
Sure, I'd be glad to. So I'm a wife, mother of three, and my husband and I actually we have. But I've told my grandkids stories. I've told my kids stories. My kids and grandkids in Colorado, I believe they do believe me. One of my sons here in Texas believes me. He wants to actually go out into, and do some investigative work with me. He's an Army sergeant and he's really excited. He's getting to retire this year. And he said, Mom, I just want to go out there and see, what I can see and see if you can point some things out to me. So we're excited about that. But I grew up in Navarro County, Texas. And when we first bought the property, it was in 1972. My dad, my brother, mom, uh, my sister, and another brother lived here on the property. And my dad and my brother would go to Dallas just about every day, and they would work in Dallas and then come home usually about 6 o'clock at night. And I think this particular day, my younger brother just went with them. So it was only my mom and me at the house. And my dad always had this, idea of, oh, just let her go do what she wants. There's nothing out there that can hurt her. And we live in a remote area. We had At the time, we had one neighbor, I believe, down here that was about a half mile up the road. It's about 15 minutes to town, and so it's mostly ranch land, and we had 20 acres here. Um, my brother actually, when he passed, he gave me his 10 acres, so I moved back onto the property where I had my siding. Um, it took a lot for me to even cross the gate to come here because of all the nightmares, anxiety, PTSD. I mean, you can name it all. And I think I've been pretty, um, traumatized by the whole ordeal. But I enjoy going out now as an adult and actually showing people here's a sign here. This, I found footprints in Georgia. Was able to show somebody that there's been six people um taken them to the woods, and they heard a scream with me. They've heard wood knocks. They've heard the whoop, and I thought that was pretty exciting, and to be able to share it with someone. But the first encounter was here um, on this property. My dad, he and my brother went up to the feed store, and the strange thing about it was there was two old guys out in front, had checkers or something on the porch, and my dad was going in to get some feed for our cows. We'd bought a couple of cows and had a couple of horses, and they were asking him. They said, "Where did you move to again?" And he gave them the directions, and they said, "Well, nobody lives down there." And he's like, "Why?" And they said, "There's a big man that comes down there and looks in people's windows at night." And he's like, "What are you talking about?" It really scared my dad. So um, when he got back home, I mean, he was calling his brothers and whoever would listen to him, basically, and he would tell them, "Look, there's guys telling me nobody lives down here because somebody looks in your windows at night." He thought somebody had escaped the mental hospital, which was more than probably 50 miles away. And so, yeah, my dad had a problem with after that with going and locking the door and checking it like 4 or 5 times before he actually went to bed. And so anyway, moving forward, I was about 3 years old when we first moved onto the property. I was 6 years old when we, we all heard. Well, I'm sorry, so I didn't get to hear it. But the way this took place was my sister had moved to Corsicana, and her husband and her wanted to come down and dinner with us and hang out with the family. So we had a picnic table out front, and we made some sandwiches and stuff. And they were through eating. My sister took her plate of food over to the was at to scrape the food out of her plate. And this was in the early 70s that this happened, but she scraped all the food out of her plate, and something screamed across the pasture at the creek. And she was 8 months pregnant. I was in the house with my mom, and I'll never forget, she came running through the door and fell over into a chair and the baby, but she was hyperventilating. She couldn't breathe and couldn't talk. And I was like, "What's wrong with you?" She just couldn't even catch her breath to tell me, but she wouldn't let me go outside. I tried to go outside. She grabbed my arm, pulled me back in, and looked out the door, and my brother and brother-in-law, my brother-in-law went and got his rifle out of his car. My brother came inside and got his gun, and they were staring at the fence line, just waiting for something to move. There shouldn't have been anyone out here but us. Like I said, our nearest neighbor was about a half mile way over in the other direction. My dad heard it, and after it was all said and done, they left and watched as they were going back up into Corsicana. They never saw anything. Um, didn't really think much about it, and after that, the actual sighting I had, I was 10 years old. Um, I was, my dad had bought a little puppy for me for my birthday, and I was 10 years old, but it was for my 11th birthday. I think it was like a week before my birthday. And this was in August, which is hard for someone to believe. And it was uh, brought up in daylight, 1 o'clock. It was hot. And I remember when I walked outside, I told my mom, "Oh, I'm just going to take my puppy outside and go down to the pond and walk around with him a little bit." And I was walking through the backyard, and I motioned for my other dogs, come on, let's go. And they never missed a chance of walking around the property with me. But I remember thinking it was really odd that they didn't move. They wouldn't go with me. They went under the house. They showed no effort in going with me. And it's like one came out and then he went along the edge of the house and just went back under the house. I'm like, okay, that's weird. But went onto the pond, and it was just my mom and me that were down there. Um, Mom stayed at the house, but I was walking along and I was looking up in this tree, and there was a bee nest up there that was pretty big. I was just kind of, being a little kid, I was just kind of checking it out. But something caught my attention, out of the corner of my eye. And I turned, and it was just right there, standing up, facing me. And I tried to turn and run because it scared me so bad, but I don't know what it was. Something like made me, it was almost like I was frozen, just like I stopped. I couldn't move. And after doing research and listening to other people about that, I believe that was the infrasound that they use. But standing there, I couldn't move. I had my face, my whole attention just, fixed on this creature. He was leaning with his back against a tree at the pond. And the first thing I noticed was his arms. It was red. It was like orangutan red for color. But his arms, you could see the muscle definition up under the fur. And so the shoulders, it was like I would tell my dad, it looked like a football player. As a little kid, I was trying to describe it. And he's like, what are you talking about? My brother's like, the shoulder pads, Dad, is what she's trying to say. It looked like a guy with the shoulder pads on, So I tried not to look directly in its face, but looking around its face, the face was really dark, like a black color. And up near the top of its head, where that sagittal crest is, that was only, the hair on it was real short, but it was dark. It was like black up there along that crest. But the thing that gets me is that day, it could have easily grabbed me. It could have easily made it over there in a few seconds and picked me up. When I showed my husband to measure this for me, because we're living here now, he said that's only about 70 yards. So very close encounter with this thing. The hair on its stomach area, it tapered down in front of its private parts, and it was a blondish color. It wasn't red there, it was blonde, and it was tipped in black. And it just kind of all tapered down in front of that. But it's funny because standing there and looking at it, I made sure I looked at everything, and I remember the look I must have had on my face when I was looking at the top of its head. It was like, wow, what is this? But it really traumatized me. But it took a step towards me, and I don't think it was coming after me. I think it was trying to stand and not lean against the tree. But when it took a step towards me, I saw its knee move and, bend, and kind of broke that trance and took off running. And I ran, like scared to death. Like, I was really really scared. But I turned thinking it would be right behind me. It wasn't there. It had left and went back into the section over there where the creek was at. And I went to the house, slammed the door shut, locked the door, screamed for my mom, and grabbed the binoculars. I was gonna see if I could look at it, and never. I waited there till dark, trying to get a glimpse of it. And my brother and dad showed up, and it wasn't dark, but it was, right when the sun was setting, and he said, "Go down there with her and see what she saw. See if you can see anything." So I told him, I said, "Are you bringing a gun? Because I'm not going down there without something." And he said, "Yeah, I'm gonna bring a gun." So on the way down there, I turned and I was like, "Is that loaded?" And he loaded it. And he said, "Well, it is now." And I said, "Good, because I'm not going down there without it being loaded." So we get down there. Uh-huh. Oh, get
No,
down
go ahead.
there,
Go ahead.
and what was that?
No, I'm not saying anything. I think it's the phone moving that's
Oh,
making some noise.
oh, we got down there to the pond, and he said, "Which tree was it?" And I pointed it out to him, and he said, "Well, I'm going to stick my gun barrel up there, and you show me, or you tell me to stop when it reaches a certain height as to how tall this thing was." So I told him where it was at the top of the head. I said, "Stop right there." I'll never forget his eyes when he looked at me. He was like, "That's 8 feet." I said, "Well, I don't know what to tell you. I know it was huge." But anyway, we came back home, and of course, my dad, I couldn't quit talking about it. And he, I guess, thought it was just starting to really overwhelm me. And he started, basically telling my mom to, try to get me to tone it down, to quit talking about it, because he didn't want people to start talking and ridiculing me and everything. Well, that didn't help because it happened anyway. Like I said, I've been everything that could be said about this thing to me. It's probably already been said, so I really don't care anymore what people think. I'm not here for money. I'm not here for followers. I'm just here to tell it is 100% real. And so after that, um, we had a lot of things happening. Um, our garden, we had cantaloupes in the garden. My brother went out there to pick some. He's like, something out there left tracks, left footprints. And my dad, he was trying to explain it to my dad. He said, those footprints are 17 inches. And it had gone into and smashed all our cantaloupes and left tracks. Um, and I was determined to get a better picture of it. Of course, back then we had those little Polaroid cameras, nothing fancy. But I kept telling my dad, if you buy a camera for me with a telescopic lens, I can prove this to you. So I got the bright idea as a kid to start leaving stuff for it in the woods. I would go halfway. I wouldn't go any farther than that. And I would hang things from the tree and, vegetables, bananas, everything I could think of. And I went down there one day to check and noticed that there on one portion of the barbed wire fence that separated our property, there was a huge matted piece of hair where it had crossed over. And I don't mean little one or two little hairs like you see on TV as hair samples. I mean, this looked like when an orangutan holds its arm up, the big matted hair. So I could see on that portion there was the bigger sample of hair, and then on the next portion, it's like he'd crossed over coming to the house and then crossed back using the section next to that and left another hair sample. So I grabbed both of them and I took them in. I was like, "Mom, here, I'm showing you this is real, you know." Oh, she said, "That's just old horsehair." I said, "Mama, we don't have a horse here. It's not horsehair." So anyway, I kept it for a while till we moved to Dallas, and I left it here in our house and never could find it after that. But I, my dad and two brothers were down by the creek, and my brother had a Torino that he was trying to fix up. Didn't have a muffler on it, but he cracked up that Torino, and when he did, it was really loud. I heard it scream. But it was this huge, big territorial scream, you know. Um, they said they never heard it because they kind of had their heads up under the hood looking at the motor and everything, but I heard it plain as day. And it makes this gurgling sound at the end. But I told them the thing was still down there, you know, and everybody kind of just went in and went to sleep. And so my mom was really afraid for us to be down there after that, and I refused to go outside unless somebody was with me. It wasn't like it used to be, you know, where I just get off the bus and go run up and down 20 acres. It wasn't that way anymore. Um, I was afraid. They'd tell me, go check the mail or something. No, I'm not going out there. I refused to. So anyway, we were moving and we went and moved some stuff to Dallas and came back down like the following weekend and picked up the rest of our belongings. But my dad was telling me this was in October, and he said, "You know, I want to light one more fire in the old wood stove. So would you get me some kindling out in the yard?" So I was walking around there picking up sticks and stuff. He was over at we had concrete steps going up to it was a mobile home, so it was going up to the first, to the, you know, to the house. And he was trying to break up the pieces, so he kept hitting it with with a hammer, try to bust up the pieces. And he would miss and hit that hammer on that concrete step. And this this creature, I don't know of what else to call it, but it must have heard my dad or heard our voices or something and saw the lights on, maybe. I don't know. But I was sitting out front in a swing, and um, we didn't have any underpinning under the house. We had a yard light in the backyard, and I saw something huge, like crawling up to the house in the backyard. And I thought, is that somebody's cow out? You know, what is that? And then I kept looking at it, and it got up to almost to the house. And I could see it was, you know, just a big black object at that point. I couldn't see any facial features or nothing. But it raised its head up and looked at my mom, I guess, who was walking back and forth in the house and was in the kitchen. And it froze, just completely still. And I guess when my mother walked on by, it started crawling again up to the kitchen window. And I could see it stand up and balance. And that's when I started getting really nervous. Um, but I kept watching it, and I was in the front yard. It was in the back, but I could see up under the house, and it didn't see me. So it turned and walked from the kitchen window to the living room window in two steps. And when it did, I saw that matted hair on its leg move. it's like the wind caught it, and I was like, "Oh crap," you know. I knew exactly what it was. I ran and I grabbed my dad by the arm. I'm just a little kid, you know, but I grabbed my house, you know. He's like, "What? What is it?" I said, "Just get in the house. Trust me." And I was pulling his arm and him to get in the house. So he finally got in up the steps and got in the house, and I slammed the door and locked it. And I said, "That thing is out there again." He's like, "What are you talking about?" I said, "Dad, it's going around looking through the windows, you know, looking at us." And we didn't have any curtains on the windows. So we were all kind of turned around, not looking at the windows. We didn't want to see it, you know. I said, "Call the sheriff, call somebody." And he's like, "Well, I'll call." My brother had gone to town. And he said, "I'll call up there to the store and tell them to send your brother home as soon as he gets there, because I don't want somebody to think we're crazy, you know, saying there's somebody down here, you know, and describing to them what you had seen." So nothing happened, but I think that's where I get my PTSD from, because I realized while I was standing there, I was staring at a doorknob on the front door, and I said, "If that doorknob moves, I'm probably going to faint, you know." And I just as a little kid, I think I was 11 or 12. I think I was 12 at the time. You know, trying to remain calm and, you know, and not cause that thing to get aggravated, because that would have been, I thought, the worst thing to do. But my brother came home and he's like, what did you call me for?" And he said, "Well, she says there's something walking around here looking in the windows." And he's like, "I didn't see a thing, you know, but I didn't know what to look for either. They just told me when I got there to hurry up, come home. There was an emergency." So we all stayed the night, and my dad we were down there, like I said, picking up our last belongings down there, and he put the mattress down in the living room for my brother and him to sleep on. And then there was one mattress in my mom's room that she and I were sleeping on. So we turned out all the lights shining in the backyard, and we didn't have any curtains on the windows, like I said. And I'm laying there asleep, facing that window towards the backyard. And what woke me up was I had my eyes closed, but the room went dark. So, you know, when your eyes are closed and you're used to a light in your face, you can put your hand in front of your closed eyes and see that it's changing, you know, see that it's going dark. So that's what woke me up. And I didn't raise up. I just opened my eyes, and here was that thing looking at me through the window. Stayed calm. I didn't to my mother because I knew how she would respond. And and when the room lightened up again, I knew it was not there staring at me anymore, but it was walking around the house looking in other windows. So, um, yeah, we left that day, and I came back one time with my kids. And my dad, he said, "Well, what'd you think?" And I said, "Well, I just kept looking at the tree line. I kept watching the creek because it really bothered me that my two little kids were out there playing. But I kept an eye on them." And so, like I said, I've had nightmares for 42 years about um, trying to find a room in my house where there's no windows so it can't look in at me. 42 years. It took me 20 years just to talk about it, because I would hyperventilate. I'd start crying. I couldn't complete the story. Um, and I met someone and he lived in Georgia, and we talked about it extensively because he was an avid hunter. And he said, "Well, tell me what you saw, because I've been in these woods for 30 years and never heard or saw anything." And I told him everything, and he's like, he was on YouTube, and he said, "I want you to listen to this." And he would play audio, from other researchers. And he said, "Always know the real ones from the fake, because if it's a real one, you'll start crying. And it's like uncontrollable. I could not listen to the audio of these things without crying, because that's how much it traumatized me. But, um, you know, I really appreciate the researchers, because they go out in the extreme and get these recordings, and they are really amazing, some of these things that you hear. But I've actually got a place over here close to me, where me and my family members go, that we've gotten a recording. The first night we were out there, because my dad used to go over there in that same area, and my dad was having experiences in this area. So, um, yeah, we had success the first night we went out there. We're going back this Saturday, and we hope to get more audio then. I would sure love to get, one of those territorial screams again. I don't know if that'll happen or not, but that would be cool. But I have gotten a strange sort of howl and a whoop, and there was two that night that we recorded, and one of them just grunted, and then the other one did the whooping sound. But it was peaceful. It wasn't anything scary. It was like you could hear in the noises they were making, they were curious as to why we were there. So it really didn't bother us a bit. We enjoyed it. So I'm just hoping that this next time around that it's as successful as it was that last time. But yeah, I've been to, like I said, in Georgia. A lot of people believe in these structures that they see in the woods. Um, so I contacted some researchers in Oklahoma that had been seeing these tree twists or X markers, and something called like a TP marker. And I've gotten pictures in the swamps of Georgia of these same things, these same structures. Um, the tree twist, from what they said, is only found in Saskatchewan. But the funny thing is, Georgia. So nobody had ever found one that they knew about um, outside of Saskatchewan. But I mean, I could take people to it right now if they wanted to go. That's the cool thing about it. I love going and looking at these things. But there was one area that I walked into. I thought I had an idea of what these teepee structures meant. Because when we'd go hunting, every time we'd scout a place to put our tree stands, there'd be a teepee structure there, one or two, three. Um, so I thought it meant, hey, could mean where they killed a deer, where they had success killing a deer, some kind of sign for something. But I walked into an area over in, I believe it was Jones County, Georgia, and we were right at the edge of the national forest. And I walked into an area, and there were so many of these things, I couldn't count them all. And they're all in a cluster. That's what was so weird. I thought, I tried to count as many as I could and counted about 60 of these things. These could be like three limbs balanced, like you would a teepee, or maybe more. Um, but after that, I had no clue as to what they meant. But it was kind of scary to walk in there not knowing what those mean, and I walked out. It scared me that bad. I walked out of the woods and I thought, this is not what researchers do, get it together and go back in those woods. But I did. I went back in the woods and I'm like amazed. I looked at all with the X structures. If you look at the bottom of the poles that they use, there's no root ball. And the one that I measured out, well, there was two actually. One was about 70 yards from the other one. The logs that are used are about 24 feet. So it's broad in there. It's balanced with another one of the exact same length, and there's no root ball. It's just two balanced limbs. And I mean, I think it's pretty cool to see all these things that they've done. We found a twisted tree limb about 15 feet, and David, the person I was with, he's like, well, that's way up there. And I said, well, if you think about it, their arms are down to their knees. They're 8 feet tall. So if they reach up that high, it's probably about accurate. Um, so this made no sense. It was right up next to the main part of the tree. And it really made no sense at all. Especially as big around as it was. I'm like, who could grab that tree limb and twist it like that? But it was really cool. That's where I found True. And he taught me how to track deer. What I was doing was I was following a doe and a fawn and just in tracks, and I was looking at those, and they were walking along the edge of a dirt road just inside the tree line, about 10 feet in. It was as if this thing was stalking them or following them, but I found it was a round circle in the dirt, and I'm like, that's a track. There's no toe prints. And I kept trying to look at it to figure out what it was. That was the heel. That was the heel of this thing. So it was actually 14 inches from where the tip of the toe was to the end of the heel. And the stride was 36 inches. So 3 feet. And I'm pretty long legged, but I had to jump to get 36 inches in a stride. So yeah, it's some of them that are full grown 8 feet, they have 5 foot strides. And it doesn't seem like much until you try to do it. And there's no way you can match that. But that's pretty cool to me. Seems like every time I go out in the woods and I encounter one of these things, I learn something new. So I just hope I don't run into one that's aggressive. That's all I can say.
Yeah. So you mentioned like the tree twists and how high it was. We came across
Yeah.
one that was about 12 feet high, and it was. I mean, it wasn't just broke; it was twisted like a dish rag, and it was hanging
Yeah.
over the road. Uh, and
Oh, wow.
and like when I was telling people about this, they were like, "Well, that probably like an 18-wheeler hit it or something." I'm like, "Well, first of all, if there was an 18-wheeler going down this little bitty dirt road, I don't know how they got out, and why didn't they hit all the other
Right.
ones going in or going out? Because
Right.
this area that we go to, it's a dead end. It's a dead end road, and for 18-wheeler to go down there just wouldn't make any sense at all. And like I said, and that was the only tree like that. And we found a hog with his head ripped off in that same area. We found plenty of tracks.
Wow.
And the reason why we go to this area is because a friend of mine had an encounter out there, and the one he saw was 9.5 feet tall. So that made perfect sense to
Oh,
us.
gee.
Yeah, yeah. And
Hmm.
so we found a bunch of tracks out there, and I've got recordings of wood knocks and howls. But what's funny though too is that you mentioned the X structure, right? And I don't know what I think about that personally. I haven't made up my mind. Um,
Hmm.
but there's a guy here in Texas also pretty much halfway between us. Um, like the nearest town would be Jacksonville, Texas. Um, so,
Okay.
well, to his location, it's the nearest town to his location. But he had a deer feeder that he stuck out in the woods. Right, it's on his property, private property. He put a deer feeder out
Hmm.
there. He put his deer stand up. He went out there 2 weeks later, and between his deer stand and the deer feeder, there was an X. So something or someone put an X out there. And it was pretty big. These logs were pretty big also. So, you
Yeah.
know, it just is, we just don't know what to think about it. But you're talking about uh, about the deer. Maybe they were marking, hey, deer come through here.
Right.
I mean, that could be
But
something, I guess. Maybe, like I said, I don't know what it means. Some people say it means keep out, but who are they telling to keep out? You know?
well, the funny thing is, my brother-in-law, who never believed me, but I kept showing him signs because we were together hunting all the time. It was me and his brother and him, you know. And I rode the four-wheeler with him into this property, and every time we went there, it was every weekend for the whole entire time of deer season lasted. Um, at the same, we would stop and have to move a tree off the road. And we moved it off the road, went on about our business, came in, left, came back the next time, and it was there again. Or not the same tree. The last time that that we moved it, I was like, "Do you not realize what's doing this? I mean, it's the same location every time. This is a different tree, and it took four of us to move this tree. So there's no root ball attached. So do you not realize what's going on here?" So what I've heard about that is they don't if they don't want you past a certain point, they will put a tree over the road that you're coming in on. And it's kind of like you stay on that side, I stay on this side, sort of thing. But um, I showed him my tracks that I had found, and he finally started. I think he started coming around because I said, just you know, keep going with me. I'll show you. And it's just funny to watch other people because my son, when he heard the scream in Georgia, when I told him to go with me that day, now it was my brother-in-law and my husband and my son and me. And I always told my husband, I said, right at dark, listen, right when it's dusky dark, that's usually when they scream. No sooner than I got that out of my mouth, way back in the swamp, it screamed. And it tree knocked 5 times right after it screamed. And everybody I've talked to as a researcher said that you don't hear that. You don't hear of that ever happening. There's usually not a scream connected with tree knocks. Well, it happened, and it was not just me that heard it, but yeah, that was pretty cool to experience that. But my son um, doesn't argue with me anymore when I talk about it. He believes it now. So I
That's
just
pretty
like
cool.
showing people, proving my point.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, I invite people out with me all the time too, and trust me, they don't take me up on it, especially the skeptics. It's funny how they won't go
Oh
out
yeah,
there. Um, but I was
well,
going to ask you, like
people.
when you saw,
Uh-huh.
like when you had your first encounter, what did that one look like? Was that more man? Was it more apish, or was it a mixture, or what would you call it?
That's the weird thing when I still to this day, I'm like arguing in my head, like, okay, it's standing upright. It's got things like it does things like an ape would do. It throws rocks, it throws sticks, it hoots and hollers, it does the bluff charges, all this stuff. And but it's just something there. It's a little off. I can't put my can't quite put my finger on it, but it's like until, unfortunately, I don't want to see anything happen to them, but unfortunately, until something is proven, it's going to have to be proven in a lab, which means they're going to have to take samples. And I don't ever want to see one of them hurt, but until that's done, I don't see how we're going to know what it is. I mean, I've referred to it as the creature, this thing or this creature. I really don't know what it is. All I know is it could have grabbed me that day and it didn't. So I was really thankful for that.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense. I guess, like I said, unfortunately, unless science grabs one, we'll probably never
Right.
know. But I keep hoping that at some point in time in our lifetime, these things will come out, and somebody will say, okay, these things do exist. I don't know who's going to do it or how
Right.
that'll happen, but I'd like to see it happen in our lifetime because these things are out there, and it doesn't matter what the non-believers think or say. People like you, people like friends that I have now in the field who didn't believe in these things or couldn't have cared one way or the other whether or not they existed. When they have their encounters,
Right.
it's like these things are real. So to me, they are real. They leave tracks, they leave hair. Good, honest,
Yep.
hardworking people like yourself have seen them. You know, you can't discount that. I mean, you just can't. You can't. I'm sure amongst the ridicule you've probably gotten, people are probably trying to tell you you saw a bear. Or whatever. It's like what a bear looks like, right?
Exactly. I've taken plenty of pictures of bears in Colorado. I lived there for over 12 years. And yeah, we had a ton of bears up there. And that's not what I saw. Uh, but I still have the newspaper clippings from 1978, I believe, for Corsicana Daily Sun, where it talks about how many sightings had occurred. I didn't even know this had been in the newspaper. I thought I was like the only one. And I have these clippings that talks about, oh, Mr. and Mrs. So and so saw it over here, and this person saw it over here. And they thought it had left the area, and it went from Trinidad all the way to Navarro Mills Lake on the other side of Corsicana. There's a creek here. There's Chambers Creek. There's Richland Creek Bottoms, which runs into Chambers. And if you're ever rolling down Interstate 45, like on the way to Houston, um, stop off at exit 217 in Richland. There's a nice rest area there. And you walk in, and like one of the first things you see is this plaque talks about all the Bigfoot sightings in the area. So they put up a nice rest area. It's on both sides of the road. I mean, there's one on the right side, one on the left side, And inside you walk in and there's that plaque that talks about all the sightings. So I wasn't the only one who saw this thing during that time. I think I was probably the one that got the best view, but yeah.
Yeah. Well, you know what I wanted to tell you because you talked about Navarro County. I talked to a guy, man, it had to be 7, 8 years ago. Um,
Hmm.
he was hunting on some private property there, and he came across this well, and he said it was full of bones, like several animals, like something had been eating and just throwing the bones inside this well, you know. And
Oh,
he's like,
wow.
it wasn't like this huge well. It was kind of a smaller well where like these animals couldn't have fallen in there and got stuck and died in there. But he said it looked
Right.
like something had just thrown a bunch of bones down there. And he said also on that property they had like a little cabin, because they were hunting. And he said in the middle of the night he heard something come to his window and was breathing really hard. Uh, and they didn't have like glass windows. They just had like an opening, so anything could have reached in or
Okay.
reached out. But yeah, he said there was something was standing at the window breathing in at him while he was asleep. He said it scared him pretty good. That he never went back to that property.
Yeah, it scared me too. But Now down here when I was a little kid, before I had my sighting, it did throw a rock at me. I was in the back of the property with my dogs, almost to the pond again, and I had my back turned to it, obviously, because I kept calling my dogs, and they, like I said before, they were acting weird. They were running along the fence line back and forth, but they wouldn't come directly to me. And I was turned with my back to this thing because it threw a rock, and that rock landed on my right side, like 5 feet away from me. And I turned, I was like, who's throwing a rock at me? But I turned and I couldn't see anything. So I don't know if it was throwing it from the creek, which is pretty far distance. But I'd hate to get clobbered by one of those things with a rock because, I mean, I don't know how far that rock came from. But yeah, down in this area, they instead of wood knocking, I think what they do mostly is they'll hit two rocks together. You can hear that down here sometimes in the woods. Sounds like two rocks being beaten together.
Yeah, yeah, I've heard that too, and I've heard like tongue popping. I think they do that too. Yeah, I've heard that
Oh,
tongue
really?
pop before. Yeah, yeah. In
Well,
fact, the
I
last
know
time I heard it was in
that.
October.
Oh, October is a good time to go. You hear a lot more vocalization in October than any other time of the year, in my opinion. But when I don't know. It's just it's amazing some of the things these things do, and you just hear these different sounds, and you point them out to people, and they're like, "Oh, I didn't know that before." And yeah, it's really fun to take people and show them the different things and different sounds. Like my friend Tammy, she's in my last audio, and uh, it's my nephew's wife, and my nephew had never heard one, and she had never heard one. So they were from Jasper, and I took them over to Richland, and there's an area I can go into down there, and she was on that audio that I sent you where the one whooped and did the grunting noises and stuff, and you can hear her little voice. Did you hear that? What was that? And so it's just good to take people in who heard things before. Yeah.
Yeah,
But I don't want to
yeah,
take kids. Kids be
yeah,
traumatized
yeah.
probably by something.
Yeah, when I
No,
first
no
started doing
kids.
this, I would take my kids out there, and I was like, man, I was basically using my kids as bait at that point. I think. Yeah,
It's what my dad would do with me sometimes, I think, because when we go into Richland Creek bottoms, yeah, we take people or you know carloads of people, and every now and then we'd get lucky and hear some things. But yeah, that part is underwater now, so we can't even get to it anymore. The lake went in. It's a shame, but I guess the other animals got pushed around to different areas. So
yeah, I think so. Well,
I was
cool
going
beans,
to
Miss
tell
Shirley.
you.
We're ready coming up on our, huh? What are you
Oh,
gonna say?
I was just going to tell you how much time you have, but when we first came down here, my husband brought a tent, and he said, "Oh, let's put." Can't do that. I stayed in my Jeep with the windows cracked just barely enough to get some fresh air in, and I slept with a blanket over my face. That's how scared I was.
Yeah,
And when I did sleep in the tent, I woke up one night in the tent and I saw a shadow of something on the other side. I could see like the shadow of something. I could see a hair moving, one little single hair. And I reached to put my hand, I felt around, put my hand on the 45, just in case. And I think it's still out here because I saw something big move over and just kind of enough to look in the tent and then move back real slow. But I think it's still here. I think it comes through occasionally. So there was some audio I got down here about a year ago, and there was two of them. They were making noises on the creek. I sent that off, and somebody, uh, another researcher said, yeah, that's definitely a couple of them. So, but yeah, it's pretty interesting.
Mm, that's pretty cool. I've got a recording that my friend Kimbo has of them mimicking an owl. There was and I'll send you that
Yeah,
recording. You can hear the owl go hoo hoo hoo, right, and then you hear this
yeah,
hoo hoo hoo. Yeah, I'll send you that recording so you can check it out and tell me what you think. Yeah, that was here in the Sam Houston, and I was going to tell you, man, if you and your son ever come down this way, I'll take you to some pretty cool hot spots. You can check them out. Tell me what you guys think, and hopefully we can find some sign. If not, maybe hear some good
great.
stuff. Yeah,
Oh,
cool.
you'd
Are
love
you
to.
part of a team, or you just solo?
Just solo. My husband and I go out, and he's excited about it. He grew up in Colorado, and we were up at Mesa Lakes. That used to be my favorite place to go, and he was raised up there. And we were in the cabin at Mesa Lakes Lodge, and the funniest thing happened in the middle of the night. I heard this big uh, whoop. I mean, it's like the thing was standing right there on the dam or something, and making the sound carry across the water because it was loud, and it was about 3 o'clock in the morning. And after that, I could not sleep. I was so afraid it was going to come crashing through the door on me, or something. But that was pretty cool to hear that up there. Yeah, but I'm solo. My husband goes with me, and we take my nephew. And I don't want to take anybody if I'm afraid that they're going to have a meltdown, because you never know what's going to happen. And like I said, I will not take a child. With me, I feel like because of what I've been through, I took my son, but he stood right by the truck. I won't take a child into the woods with me. But he stood right by the truck like my dad used to do me. He'd make me sit in the car with the window down. But I have a few other stories. I know you don't have time, but maybe um, you know sometime we can sit down and I can tell you about some of the things in Georgia and some of the things in Oklahoma too.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, we'll have to get together sometime and swap stories.
Yeah, definitely.
Cool. Well, cool, Shirley. I do appreciate you coming on.
Sure. I appreciate it as
Yeah.
well. I love talking about it, and it kind of helps with my therapy. That's what
Yeah, well,
somebody
you know
used to
what? I
tell
I
me.
think a lot of people actually get some good out of this too when they hear other people talk about it and they realize they're not,
Right,
alone.
right.
Well, cool.
Well, my
Yeah, man. Well,
husband, he always told me, he said, the more you talk about it, the more you'll start healing from it. And he said, get your story out there, because there's people that need to hear it. Um, I don't know. I mean, sometimes it's like what Bob Gimlin said. Sometimes I wished I hadn't seen it, but I did. I didn't ask to see it, but it was there. And I understand what he's saying, because I got ridiculed like he did in town. So I understand exactly what he's saying. But yeah, I'm just not ashamed of it anymore. I'm not afraid to tell people, and I just get my story out there, because that way, I think the more we talk about it, the more people will get the idea that needs. I don't see anything. I'm tired of them being viewed as a joke. Is what it is. It's not a joke. They're absolutely real, and that's how I feel about it. I just want a fed species. So
yeah, I totally agree with you on that too. And yeah, like I said, if you're ever down this way, man, I'd love to take you guys out, and show you around a little bit. If I'm ever up your way, I hope you can show me around. you know. But
Oh,
yeah,
sure.
So with all that being said, we're gonna wrap it up. We're already a little bit past the hour. Anything else you want to add? Anything else you want to say to people who might be interested in this subject, who might want to go out looking?
Oh, they can get in touch with me. If you want to give them my information, they can call in and, you and however you want to handle it. I don't mind taking people with me. Um, I'd like for them to be in the same frame of mind I am that, hey, go look and, you know, see what you can see, but don't try to hurt it, unless you absolutely have to, don't go out there to get a trophy, you know. It's got to be looked at as something more than that. So,
Yeah, totally agree.
I mean, the legends of years. So, I think I feel sometimes that I've seen it too. Kind of, I'm on the fence. It's like not everybody's seen one. So I think it's sometimes it's just really cool that it.
Well, cool, Miss Shirley. All right, well, let's wrap it up. And hold on real quick. I'll talk to you a little bit off the air. But everybody else, thanks a lot for tuning in. I hope you guys liked the show. I know I did. Shirley was a great guest. She had some great stories, great encounter, really, too. So I hope you guys enjoyed it. If you have any
Mhm.
questions for her, you want to reach out to her, contact me at beyond.woodline@gmail.com. I don't mind being the middleman. Um, so yeah, I will talk to you guys on Monday. I have a show Monday. Um, so yeah, we'll see you guys on Monday, and you guys have a great night. Hold on, real quick, for sure.